Hello, everybody. Welcome into the second half edition of Kings Talk with Lina Washington and Sean Cunningham. We are getting ready for the Kings to open up their second half of the season, starting 8 games below 500 at 14-22. They will welcome in the Houston Rockets, who I just counted, but I believe they've lost 13 straight and 14 of their last 15. So it's a good way to, I guess, get your confidence up, you would hope, when you open up the second half after a roller coaster first half. We just heard from De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton, who will be on a minutes restriction tomorrow night. And we got 36 more games and a grind coming up, Sean.
Yeah, and Houston's coming into Sacramento, also thinking that this is a get-right game for them because of Sacramento's struggles. So, yeah, with 14 wins for the Kings, 11 wins for the Rockets, it's cellar dwellers for both of these teams, and maybe only one of them really have any hopes of trying to turn the season around, and that would be the Kings.
Yeah, again, you only got to make it into the 10th spot to at least become eligible for a play-in opportunity to make it to the postseason. And one of the topics of conversation as we film this tonight is, of course, the 1-year mark since the NBA shut down and the coronavirus pandemic really hit, I guess, America and the sports world hard, and it became very real. Like Sean and I were standing inside Golden One Center watching in real time as the Pelicans did not leave the locker room on a nationally televised game, the first that we were all looking forward to, seeing Zion Williamson for the first time. But obviously a lot has changed since then. Some teams are welcoming in fans at limited capacity. Some might go even larger with their capacity in terms of attendance.
Hello, Texas.
Yes, looking at you, Texas. But we know that as it stands right now, Golden One Center is filled with cardboard cutouts and the people who are working the game in terms of media, security, or part of team personnel or general operations. So that's where we are at as we look ahead to the second half. And a lot has happened since that last year, Sean. But one thing that hasn't changed is the Kings don't look like a postseason team.
No, but at least, the Kings were playing their best basketball going into that game, and everyone was looking forward to that Kings and Pelicans matchup. And, like you mentioned, first time seeing Zion Williamson in Sacramento, that was going to, of course, bring some weight with it. But, the Kings were rolling. So it's really unfortunate to really, boil it down to a selfish Kings perspective and say, oh, damn you, COVID, for ruining the season. But, someone asked me the other day, like, does it feel like 1 year? First answer is yes. But then again, it's also like, I can't believe it's been a year because we've been through so much already. And here we are still watching NBA basketball in Golden One Center with no fans. And I've said all year long that I don't want that to start feeling normal. It doesn't yet. It still feels very, very weird. But maybe there's a hope we do see Kings fans in that building coming up very shortly. And maybe there's a hope that it happens before the end of the year, just the way things are looking like in California, around the rest of the world, the way vaccines are going. So, not to delve too much into that, but it was interesting to hear comments from both De'Aaron Fox, Luke Walton, looking back on that night because it was such a chaotic night. And I think when we were in there experiencing it for ourselves, I think we felt like this wasn't going to be a quick halt in the season. I think we both felt that it would definitely have some longevity to it, but by no means did I think it would be 4 months removed before they started playing basketball again. And then for it to go to a bubble scenario is unlike anything we could have imagined.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were just watching the game in Oklahoma City, excuse me, play out with the Utah Jazz, and obviously everything that transpired from there. But the league has come a long way and has been a leader almost in terms of testing and showing that a streamlined process to keep people safe and to make sports happen again is possible. Obviously the National Hockey League followed suit, adding a bubble of their own. The G League is still playing in a bubble in Atlanta. We've seen several other leagues kind of take that route that we saw Adam Silver in the league kind of forge a path to making things happen over the summer. But it's kind of wild to think that you and I haven't even seen our desks inside our newsroom for almost a full calendar year at this point.
That is
We
true.
are broadcasting out of our lobby, but yeah, have not been inside our normal digs in a year.
Yeah, and this working from home scenario, like we both are, is here I am on the couch this time, and you've got your setup. I mean, it is feel weird. I've told people all along. I mean, looking at it from a sports journalist and a broadcasting perspective, it is an interesting challenge. I think I like the challenge. Am I over the challenge? Sure, I'd like things to get back to normal, but it seems like we're slowly getting there. And I think by the time that when that happens, we're not only will we be ready for it, I think we can look back and really be proud of not only the work that you and I have done at ABC 10, but look at our peers and some of the work that they've done in other areas of the country and having to cover sports as well. So I think it is a good moment. And even looking it back from just a King standpoint, hearing both De'Aaron Fox and Luke Walton talk about it, both of them encouraged about where we are as a society, kind of in a world moving forward out of this pandemic. And then really listening to De'Aaron, because those players, they have to go through every single day of testing. I mean, you would think that you are in the most heightened of tiers when they're playing, and for them to be able to, I said, do you even pay attention to what's going on in the world, or because you are in a rather kind of a bubble, do you just kind of ignore it and just wait for things to change and just say, hey, everyone, the switch is flipped. We can come outside and play now. We can kind of do this. And he says, no, it's impossible to ignore. So I felt that was a pretty interesting look into just the mentality and the the headspace that these players have as they approach the challenge of having to work every single day and have to be tested every single day and expect to compete at the highest level. And it's not just them; it's every NBA team there is. So the rigors of that schedule is definitely one that's got to be unbearable, and I think even when we're talking about the All-Star break, even though it wasn't very long and none of these guys had representation in Atlanta at the All-Star game or the festivities, just to have those few days to kind of decompress will go a long way for every NBA team.
Yeah, and we know Luke Walton, got away with the family for a bit before getting back to business with Monty McNair. But, last time we left our viewers, Sean, we had made a friendly wager, at least some shot calling in terms of the All-Star festivities, and I did not fare very well. First of all,
well,
get well soon, Devin Booker.
Yeah, in fairness to you, you lost your guy, and I would say me picking Steph Curry in the 3-point competition, way for me to go out on a limb.
Sure.
So I respect you, going out on the limb there. But yeah, I took. We both lost the dunk contest, so we both had Cassius Stanley. That didn't go well. By the way, the dunk contest was straight trash. I hated the judging. Trash. I hated it.
I was pleasantly surprised with Obi Toppin's creativity and skill set. I think that Anthony Simons's edge was that he nailed every dunk the first time.
And there was creativity to it. I look, and despite, him being an NBA player in his, I believe, second year, and we still have NBA analysts who call him Simmons, which is just ridiculous.
Right.
Anthony Simons was, I think, the one that had the most creativity. I think it's very difficult to have any sort of creativity, but I don't like the judges. I feel like we've been spoiled the past few years because the dunk contest was kind of back, but in a pandemic, I think I'll accept this one. I mean, it didn't feel like the dunk contest I wanted to see before with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine and the likes of them, and Aaron Gordon just absolutely getting robbed of dunk contest champion in my opinion twice. I didn't enjoy that, but 3-point shootout was fantastic. Skills challenge goes quick, and I was happy that Domantas Sabonis pulled off the upset. The big men were dominant once again in the skills challenge, and he was a runner-up last year and this year takes home the trophy. And I believe you had Luka Doncic, which he eliminated in the first round, so that was fun.
Yes, I shared the clown makeup GIF because that's how I was feeling after watching everything happen. And I had the opportunity to go with Mike Conley. Should have just done an easy trade in that regard. But, I just did not. Still wouldn't have won, obviously, but at least it would have been a better showing on my part.
But the showing that you've had is in the first half, you picked the Kings to win 15 games, and here they are sitting at 14. So You can, and then you were laughing when we did this show last week. You were laughing at the fact that I gave the Kings a chance to win the Lakers or the Trailblazers game, and they almost swept it.
I almost, but they did not.
Right.
Okay, they caught the Lakers on the second night of a back-to-back without LeBron.
LeBronless Lakers.
So I mean.
And it wasn't just him. It was like everybody.
Down to a Kyle Kuzma missed bucket. So that wasn't even,
And it was hilarious. It's no Anthony Davis, no LeBron, no Caruso, no. I know I'm forgetting some others in there, but yeah, it was pretty ugly. But can we just say, I mean, look, all due respect to De'Aaron Fox, Dennis Schroeder just ate him alive. I mean, they had absolute problems with him, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe that's my one. I can take it a little easier that one because the next night I've got Dame Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers, and Dame goes off for 40.
Right. Well, I mean, at least they were able to go out with a little less of a sour taste in their mouth, come in with that win in Portland. But I didn't even get a chance to really look at or make my call for the second half of the season, but perhaps we'll be able to dive into that later on in this portion of the program. But I think that, you gotta start off with a good showing, a good defensive effort, at least against this Rockets team that has been struggling. And, it's been almost like a pick your poison in terms of how the Kings have fallen short in the first half of the season. Is it that they're allowing these guards to go off? There was a stretch where they had, all of the guards in the Western Conference scoring 30 plus, and then you got the big men eating, and then you got the losing streaks, the roller coaster of losses and wins, and it seems like this team has yet to put together a good stretch that fans can really feel good about at the end of the day. Yes, they had that great winning streak at the beginning of the season that kind of took people by surprise, but does that really mean much when you lose 9 straight or 9 of your last 11? Not quite sure.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the only thing it proves is that, they're able to string together a winning streak, that this team is capable in small sample sizes of playing basketball to the best of their ability and being able to show that they can be a competitive team. Obviously, the defense is just unbelievably bad. And Luke Walton talked about it today about, not really having the right, being in the position to be able to make too many changes along the way, to be able to just maybe accentuate the positives, simplify things, go forward and not make too many changes. He's not anticipating any rotational changes. So I think what he's talking about is really trying to get the offense clicking and really just try to simplify the things to make themselves better. I don't know how they can overcome being the dead last in the NBA in defense.
Yeah, that's certainly not going to get it done. You can score 120 points a night, but if you're letting your opponent score 125 at the end of the day, that's not going to get you into the 10th seed at the very least. If you're looking at end this NBA league longest playoff drought, soon to be the longest in league history, if they can't get that right. And now joining us to talk a little bit more about the Kings season, their second half, all the turmoil that Kings fans have endured over the last decade or so. We want to welcome in our friend Matt George with the Locked On Kings podcast, with the Locked On Podcast Network, and one of our old pals that we got to see around Golden One Center, one of the few faces that were allowed inside for this pandemic season.
Well, if there's pain to be talked about over the course of these 15 years that we've been without playoffs, I certainly can talk about it. Last time the Kings made the playoffs, I was 12 years old, just to put that into perspective. So I'm ready.
Me, Matt. Way to date me.
And Sean was what? You were in your mid 30s, late 30s?
How dare you?
But it's a pleasure to be on, guys. I'm excited about this partnership going forward. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that partnership. How about that? Tegna buys the Locked On Podcast Network, which consumes all the major sports. But here in Sacramento, we know him, we love him. Matt George with the Locked On Kings podcast. And we get you every single week now. So I can't wait. Yeah, this will be fun. A little added dynamic, and he's got better lighting than I do, that's for sure. So
Definitely setting the tone with the purple background, Matt.
I can change it too. I got all sorts of colors.
Ooh,
If I can
yeah,
find
we
the
like
remote.
that.
Oh well, not important.
Matt, we were just talking. We were just talking about this Kings team at the halfway point, and you know, I know you tend to be a little bit more optimistic because you are Captain Kool-Aid with the King's Punch that you drink, bursting through the wall, going, "Oh yeah." And I'm a little bit more on the, realistic kind of tough love kind of side because I've experienced every single one of these losing seasons, and I don't succumb to the 7-game win streaks. I don't let those fool me until we see something happen. It's fun to see them competitive, but I'm just curious, like, what you think they're at here at this midway point.
Well, I appreciate your ability to stay mellow, and that's something that I've worked on this season in particular. I can't remember who I was talking to on the Locked On Kings podcast. Actually, I think it was you, Sean, that I was talking to recently, and I said, this year is by far not one of the worst that Sacramento Kings fans have sat through over this playoff drought, but the extreme ups and the extreme downs, plus everything with COVID and no fans in the building, has made this an exhausting year. So it's certainly been a test for the optimism. But hey, I was optimistic to see the All-Star break show up to give us a couple days rest. I'm optimistic about the pairing of De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton. Arguably, Tyrese's emergence has been the biggest win this season. I'm excited to see where the Kings go with it, but they have a lot of decisions to make in the near future that I think are going to really impact both the immediate and long-term pathway for this Kings team.
Yeah, and you mentioned that as we look ahead to the trade deadline coming up in about 2 weeks, it seems like the name that we keep hearing and have been hearing for several weeks is Harrison Barnes and the Celtics. How do you see that shaken out? What is your immediate thought and feeling? Because, I mean, Harrison Barnes has been an integral part in the Kings' success since he landed here in the trade with Dallas years ago. And if he's taken out of that starting lineup, as we've seen as he sat out a couple of games with injury, this team's likely not to be successful, or it's going to be a lot harder for them to win a basketball game. So when you see that and you see Harrison Barnes is the topic of trade talks, what's your immediate reaction to that?
I go back and forth with this, and I'm actually leaning towards another side after my conversation with James Ham on today's Locked On Kings podcast. But after losing Bogdan Bogdanovic during the offseason for nothing, even if I understand why Monte McNair and the Kings made that decision, it gives me the desire to see the Sacramento Kings try and maximize the value of Harrison Barnes playing in arguably what's his best season in his career so far. But what does maximize look like? Is that just trading him away for a young player and a draft pick, which some seem to believe would be the obvious package or clear package in a Boston Celtics type trade? Or is that not enough for the Kings to move on from a very solid small forward playing that wing position that historically has been extremely difficult for this Kings team to fill? I mean, all the years of John Salmons being the best small forward, no disrespect to John, but being the best small forward.
No disrespect. It's really since Ron Artest, to be honest, the last true small forward they had. That shows you the disconnect. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's Ron Artest and then all those years, and then Rudy Gay comes, and you have that excitement of the few years of Rudy Gay. But then at the end of Rudy Gay's tenure, I remember him not being too popular. Then unfortunately he gets that injury. He's gone, and then we had a couple of years of Justin Jackson and Iman Shumpert was playing the position.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was garbage.
And so now you have
the span was Artest to Rudy Gay, and it was a whole lot of crap in between.
Yeah.
So going on from Rudy Gay to Harrison Barnes signified to be kind of that moment. But I'm kind of with you, Matt, because I don't think you can really truly hang your hat on losing a talent like Harrison Barnes, who has a de-escalating contract, and just get back first-round picks and surround yourself with guys that you already have that are that young, because you don't win with guys that are that young.
Yeah, and talking with James today, he was talking about it still could be a good move to trade Harrison Barnes away, but are you getting – I think the term that he used was like desperation value, like taking advantage of the fact that the Boston Celtics, they need to compete. They want to compete right now. They're trying to catch both the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers. They have that big hole at that small forward, that wing position. Harrison Barnes could theoretically really help them. So make them pay for that help that he would provide for them. And it wouldn't be just a rental. He still got 2 years on his contract. So maximizing that by getting multiple first round draft picks along with a young talent to make salaries work. I don't know if that's possible, but I think in this situation, Monty McNair should look for top dollar with Harrison Barnes. And if you don't move on from him, you haven't lost anything. I mean, you still have that solid, not just player on the floor, but the community member that he is, how important he is to that locker room. And with his contract, the money de-escalating every single year, that makes it a little bit easier for that side to swallow that side of the pill.
I don't know about you guys, but when I look at Harrison Barnes and I mean, I know the Celtics are the one that everyone wants to target because they have a allotment of first round picks. They've even got a talent like Aaron Nesmith, who I think is very, very attractive to a team like Sacramento who needs perimeter shooting. That's all well and good, but there are other teams out there that could definitely use the talents of Harrison Barnes. And curious to see if you guys have had any teams out there that you've been wondering or kind of had an inkling about. I mean, I can go first because for me, I think John Collins is a guy that sticks out. Atlanta is not a situation that is working out too well over there. I think he is a guy that can be had. And I think it also, you look at not necessarily what Harrison Barnes provides in that regard, but you kind of help make a decision in one way or another with someone like Rashawn Holmes because, you know, Harrison, look, like it or not, whether or not you move on from Marvin Bagley, the likelihood of getting, giving up on Marvin Bagley is very low to me. I feel like you still have to see that through. He's technically in his second season, so you're not good enough to give up on good talent or unproven talent. So in that regard, it kind of makes the stomaching of, well, do we pay Rashawn Holmes that much money going forward, or do we kind of stomach it? Does this help it, bring it back a little bit better, get a talent like John Collins? He's somebody that I've looked at, and I think that there could be interest there from a Sacramento perspective.
And how desperate is Atlanta to make a win now move? They've had a season that's just been riddled with injuries, unfortunately for them, but they had expectations coming into the year, at least from my understanding over here in Sacramento, of they're going for playoffs. They expect to be in the playoffs. They want to maximize it and try and win right now. Whether that's a championship run, I don't think they're too concerned about that, but they expected to be in the postseason. And I believe, we've already seen with a head coaching change, jobs are on the line if that is not fulfilled. So is there a chance that maybe they work their way into a panic move or a somewhat desperate type move where they're afraid of losing John Collins? They don't want to pay him, so they're willing to trade him away for a package that involves Harrison Barnes. I could see that working. I'm trying to think, and I'm racking my brain, Sean and Lina, about a team in the Western Conference that is trying to put themselves in that position to add a talent like Harrison Barnes that solidifies their chance to come out of the Western Conference. We know the Lakers. I still feel the Lakers are the team to beat as they are the champions, even with all the injuries that they've been dealing with. Utah's playing out of their mind right now. The Phoenix Suns are in second place somehow, just the Chris Paul effect there. So I wonder if there's a good fit potentially in the Western Conference, because a lot of the rumors that we've been hearing, even the ones involving guys like Nemanja Bjelica, Buddy Hield, have all been in the Eastern Conference, it seems.
Well, look at what the Spurs just did. I mean, with them looking at a buyout with LaMarcus Aldridge, obviously the Lakers are still looking for a big. But even with if you're looking at Harrison Barnes, I think one of the ones that makes a ton of sense is right down the road in Golden State, place he's got familiarity with. So, I think there's definitely possibilities out there, but I think the king that's the most likely, and Lina and I, we talked about it just last week, was the guy that is most likely to be on the move is going to be Nemanja Bjelica.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's expecting that. And I think you're able to do that for a guy who really has had a difficult way to work his way into the lineup at times, a guy that likely should be a rotational player, but because of the fact that they want to see Marvin Bagley at the 4 has kind of taken time away from him.
But I wonder what peak value is for Nemanja Bjelica. Is it a late first rounder is the absolute best you can get? Do you care about value, or are you happy just to take anything back? I wonder what Monty McNair, what the negotiations would look like on that front. You're shaking your head. It would be like, just take what you can get back, I suppose.
Yeah, look, when you lose someone like that, it's not going to be much. Obviously you've got to get salaries to match and all that stuff. But He's going to go to a good team, and it's not really a move that you're making to make better for yourself. That's for sure.
I still think the ideal move, the biggest win for the Kings at the trade deadline would be finding a suitor to take Buddy Hield. And I'm not just talking about dumping the contract and getting rags and trash and a bad contract back. I'm hoping you can get some kind of asset for Buddy just for his elite shooting ability alone. But as happy as I've been pleased with Buddy Hield's development outside of just shooting the basketball this season, his replacement is already here in Tyrese Haliburton, unless the Kings try and explore a small lineup, which I don't think is going to work. And as going into this year and over the last couple of years on paper, we believe that Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox could be an ideal 1-2 punch backcourt together. But the defensive issues alone suggest that it's just not going to work, and that's not going to be the case. So I wonder how aggressively Monte McNair is and does shop Buddy Hield, because he's really the king that we've heard the least rumors about. And a lot of that to me has to do with the fact that it sounds like these rumors are not coming out of Sacramento. These rumors are coming out of Boston. These rumors are coming out of Philadelphia, Miami, whoever else is interested in some of the pieces the Kings have.
Yeah, I think from what I see, I personally, if you're going to shop Harrison, get the most you can out of it. But I think that would be detrimental to the opportunity that the team has in this season, specifically to at least get to a position that you're talking the playoffs, that these guys can actually have that experience, maybe get hot at the right time, as we saw they were able to do before the shutdown last season, and kind of string together some good performances. And again, I don't see that happening without the leadership and the presence of Harrison Barnes in the locker room, on the court. I'm curious what the likelihood, the confidence level that either of you have that the Kings will make a move, whether it is to shop Buddy Hield or Nemanja or Harrison, if that comes to fruition. On a scale of 1 to 10, I guess, how likely do you think the Kings are to make a move?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, I think it's an 8 or higher. I do believe the Kings will make a move, mostly because I think it will involve Nemanja Bjelica. I don't see how Nemanja Bjelica is a king beyond the trade deadline. Whether Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes are also involved, that's another question. But I think Bjelica will be on the move. I think there are enough teams interested in him, and like we were talking about, not too much expected value back. And I believe the Kings are confident that they know they could get an asset for Bjelica rather than just outright buying him out and letting him sign where he chooses. So I think a trade will get done for sure involving Bjelica. But with Buddy or Barnes specifically, that's where it gets a little bit tricky.
I agree. And I'm not confident that the Kings will trade Buddy Hield, but I'm also not confident that they want to. And I know that kind of flies in the face of a lot of reports that are out there, but look at the league. Shooting is at a premium. You have a head coach, with all due respect to Luke Walton, will not be here next year, all but certain. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
The one thing we know, we've seen Buddy Hield play at a fantastic level in Sacramento. He struggled under Luke Walton, a guy he wasn't all that fond with last year, if people don't remember. A guy who's been shown the ability to both start and come off the bench. This season had been a rocky start from him, just like last year was, and he's shown the ability to string some games together. But there's a premium on talent. Like I said before, you're not good enough to shove talent out the door without getting anything in return. And trading the likes of Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes, I just don't see that making you better. Trading even someone like Marvin Bagley, I don't see that making you better. Granted, I'd be happy to be wrong and see a move that just shocks us all, but I just don't see that. I don't foresee that at the moment. And with Buddy Hield and his shooting ability, we've seen the likes of Davis Bertans get paid for his shooting ability. The likes of Joe Harris get paid for his shooting ability. Buddy Hield is among the most elite shooters in this league, and we haven't seen the Buddy Hield we know and love. And certainly we know that Buddy Hield goes out there and probably out of every 10 plays, 4 of them he's breaking. here's the set item that we want, the play we want to run, and Buddy Hield's running something completely different. We know his deficiencies on defense. He's not alone in this league of being a player that can't play defense, but he is an elite shooter in this league. And when you're elite at anything in this league, that's a very good thing to have. And you don't push that out the door for a rebuilding tool or just to get that contract off your books. You need to build yourself to around Buddy Hield. Maybe he can't be your best player. I agree. Maybe he can't even be your second best player. I agree there. But he is a guy that is paid handsomely, that hopefully can, use that ability to the best of the team. And look, we've seen them play. We've seen success under Buddy Hield playing well. Dave Yeager, who might have been one of Buddy Hield's, toughest critics, he had his best career under Dave Yeager. So get a coach in here. All due respect to Luke Walton, get someone and see how that looks first before you start pawning him off to somebody else.
But choosing to wait, though, I wonder how much of a significant financial impact that has on the team. Where does that harm their chances of being able to resign Richaun Holmes? We don't know what his kind of value is, what kind of money he's going to command. We know if we know anything about Monty McNair, it's trying to keep cap flexibility. And I even asked James Ham about this on today's podcast. If the Kings go through the trade deadline and don't move on from either Buddy Hield or Harrison Barnes, have them still on the books, I asked James if he looks at that as a potential negative. Now, he said no, because you can always move on from those guys in the offseason financially if you have to. But if we're trying to piece together Monty McNair's plan, which who knows what it is, it sounds like it would make sense to want to move on from one of those contracts. But I do agree, you don't want to give up an elite shooting talent like it's an expiring deal that's about to run out, that's just eating your cap, who provides nothing and sits on the end of the bench.
Or that it can't help you. Like I think, Lina, you would agree. I mean, Buddy Hield is a guy, and I know fans get on him at times, but this is a player who can help you, has shown the ability to help you.
Absolutely. Even if he's not been present in a lot of games, he's been able to come up in clutch moments, as we've seen even in the earlier struggles that this team has experienced. And even in the games where he struggled shooting, he was able to compensate in facilitating the ball, in rebounding, and finding ways to at least help his team in the moment. Of course, we've noted and we've seen the frustrations of lapse in, defensive schemes, or just seeming lost on whatever the play is at the time, notably, on that road trip where they won one of their games on the road. But I struggle with the idea of moving this team forward in the identity that they've already built without Buddy Hield being a part of that, and without Harrison Barnes contributing his veteran leadership. And he's having a career year. Of course, that adds to his attractiveness as an opponent or as another team. But in terms of dealing him away and what they've been able to build here with that in mind, your
biggest players, your most important players are far too young, and you need more veteran players on this team. It's just a bad collection of young players that have terrible basketball IQs and don't know the game the way they should. And that's all part of development. But in order to bring them along, you need that veteran presence. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you're losing someone like, Harrison Barnes, what are you getting back? And if it's just a first round pick that's likely towards the back end of the first round picks, is that going to help you long term? Getting someone like Romeo Langford, Kevin Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, I think there's some nice talent there, but you need kind of guys that have been around the block that are professional basketball players.
Absolutely. I think a couple of the buzzwords or phrases we've heard in this first stretch of games is physicality, a lack of it, and basketball IQ, a lack of it. We've heard players and Luke Walton alike acknowledge that, and how that's been a factor in some of these games that sometimes the Kings absolutely winnable. I mean, the dissection that Luke Walton took us through of the final 2 minutes against Charlotte, which was a deflating loss for that team at home, just from the shot clock and what guys are running and what they're deciding to do in that moment, to, just overall defensive effort, right? We've seen that has been something that this team still needs to learn and harness, and these guys still need to implement every day in a full 48 minutes of action. And we'll see if they're able to make it click at the right time. Again, they could get to a nice little stretch in these next 36 games where they're looking like a playoff team, whether it's the 8th seed, the 10th seed, or somewhere in between. Matt, do you think that this team will be able to crack it into the play-in tournament, at least when it all comes down to it?
Oof.
Mr. Optimism.
I know it's my optimism jersey is staring at me in the closet right now, and I'm about to betray it. I don't see it personally unless the Kings made some kind of buyer plus seller move, if that makes sense, like a John Collins type acquisition. But I don't know if you could pull that off without trading away an important piece right now that would also help your chances. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Lina, about the physicality and the basketball IQ. Arguably, Harrison Barnes is top of the team in both those categories with how physical he plays and how high his basketball IQ is. You trade that away, the team that's already bad in both those categories gets worse. We've seen a fairly similar roster put together good stretches, not just this season, but even going back to last season before the anniversary that we're about to celebrate of the 1 year of the season coming to an end and us not getting that what would have been probably a really fun matchup between the Kings and the Pelicans on the 11th. But I think this team is capable of playing significantly better than they are. I even argued during their stretch of when they'd won 8 out of 9 games that was more accurate of a representation of what this team could be than the stretch where they lost 9 of 11 earlier on in the season. But with the ups and downs, the inconsistencies, I have serious question marks about any playoff bid. They might be able to scratch their way into the play-in tournament and then try and fix the mistakes that they had during the bubble, which I understand was completely different circumstances too, with so many guys testing positive for COVID and Rashawn Holmes getting on timeout for accidentally going a little too far to get his wings. It was different situations led to how poorly they performed in the bubble. So I'm sure they would like another opportunity at that play-in tournament. And I've also been always arguing on the side of focus on the players that are here. You have theoretically, if your core as of right now is Fox and Haliburton, your core is here. So why wouldn't you want to get them the minutes and the experience of potential playoff basketball right now? I just don't know how realistic that is. I think it's more likely that the Kings finish, let's say, with a good odds at a top 5 pick than it is that they finish in the play-in tournament at this point in time.
So you're saying they should tank?
No, God, no. I hate that word. I hate the word tanking completely.
First of all, players and coaches don't tank. I mean, the organization, yes. But what you're hoping for is seeing them in the top 5 of the lottery, which, I mean, they could finish with the 4th and 5th best record or worst record in the league, and that's not a guarantee.
And they'll get the 8th pick.
Exactly. We've seen this film before, Lina. I feel like we can get to a point with this Sacramento Kings team right now, and we can say definitively we have a strong enough sample size to know that they're garbage defensively. This team cannot sustain efforts against physical teams because they'll wilt. We've seen moments for sure, and certainly we've seen lineups that have helped them compete with some of those physical teams a little bit better. But what I would think is if they can hover around that 10th seed, and right now I believe without looking, we're at 3 games of the 10th seed right now, which is worthy of that play-in tournament. So I feel like much like last year with the way the bubble was, if they can hover around that alone will in itself be playoff matchups. That will itself be playoff experience. I know it's not quite the playoffs, but if there was ever a season when you're going to miss the playoffs, it's this one. You have no fans. You're not making money. It's just a way for me to just get this season over with. Use what they sought to make the most from this season, which was to put a competitive team on the floor and hope to develop those things. And Lina, we talked about it last week. Developing Fox, Tyrese Haliburton, Marvin Bagley, those 3 are kind of the key things you need to have a better idea of come June or July when this thing wraps up. As opposed to where you were when this thing began in December. So I think from that standpoint, it will be a success. And again, you're going to be moving on to a different head coach. I think we all can agree in that's going to happen. So Lina, to your point earlier about the identity of this team, we know that this team can't compete on that level. But we also know in order for them to compete in that level, they have to just score, lights out scoring, quick pace. And they've gotten away from a lot of that. The offense can look a little janky at times, and we saw what it took. It took a Herculean effort from De'Aaron Fox scoring upwards of 30 points a night to propel this team, and I just don't think you can sustain that. So we know what it looks like in order to be able to play that way, to try to outscore opponents and not stop opponents. I don't think you can sustain that, but if you can cover around that 10, I think that'll be a good thing. And again, Lina and I talked about this. I think at best, maybe all this shows you that you're a 500 basketball team at best. And even then, 500 basketball, I think Kings fans would take going into next year.
The Golden State Warriors currently looking at the standings. They're a game above 500, and they're the ones sitting in the 10th seed. Although you're right, Sean, they're only 4.5 games ahead of the Sacramento Kings with a little less than half the season remaining. So there is still plenty of time for the Kings to catch them. I just wonder about how much, if you keep this group together for the most part, how much you're just running back the same group again and again with the hope of getting another coaching change, changing everything for you. I don't know if I would feel confident enough as Monty McNair going in with this same group next season. Into the off season, fine, but I feel like a major move or something significant, a significant change would have to come in the off season. And maybe that significant change is just moving Tyrese Haliburton into the starting lineup and getting Buddy Hield to buy into the fact that he could be an essential sixth man off the bench, because we can see right now the Kings have absolutely no depth whatsoever. I mean, what is Luke on a 7, technically 8-man rotation over these last few games, but Daquan Jeffries has played like 6 or 7 minutes in some of those games. So granted, Tyrese has been out and Hassan Whiteside is out.
But doing it in the middle of the season, I mean, you're talking are looking ahead to next year. Lots can happen. Off-season draft. I mean, there's a whole mountain of things in front of you before you even get to next season. So I think I share that concern with you, and those are decisions that can be made, of course. But here you are in March at the trade deadline. I don't think you need to panic.
For all we know, everything's going according to plan for Monty McNair. So you're right about not panicking.
Well, we do know Monty McNair is enjoying games courtside at Sacramento. We have yet to actually talk to him in person, of course, but we've gotten to hear a little bit about what he sees for this team via Zoom. And in his first year as GM, his team is at least 8 games below 500 heading into the second half of the season. A nice stretch of 36 games. What is it? 8 back-to-backs. I don't even know how many 3 games in 4 nights. It's going to be a grind.
8 of them. 8 back-to-backs, 8 stretches.
Well.
Oof, terrible.
Lovely.
We're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing this every single week, right, Matt? You're going to join us, Locked On Sports. You're now our coworker at Tegna.
I'm in, and if the Kings start winning, I will accept all the responsibility. If the Kings keep losing, we know it's still Sean Cunningham's fault from when he started covering the team years ago.
I'll take that.
That is a fact.
Yeah, I'll take that. Lina and I have been a fan of Locked On Sports. We've been guests on that program. Love talking Kings hoops with you. If no one has ever seen the Locked On Kings podcast, what do they expect?
Well, we provide fantastic daily content as much as possible, conversation, interviews with some of the greatest local and national guests that we can find, insight. And overall, it's about building a community, a place where Locked On King or just Kings fans in general can come and not just listen to a talking head on a pedestal, speak down to them, but someone who they can interact with, engage with conversation. If you agree or disagree, we welcome it all there. And in the end, we're all just trying to get through another tough, long season in this ridiculously long playoff drought together. And hopefully it'll end. Who knows? But we're taking it a day at a time, but having fun and being informative while doing it.
Of course. And we're going to be joined by Matt every week or every other week or however many times we need to talk about what is happening here in Sacramento at Kings Landing, as we so lovingly call it. Matt, where can people find you if they want to follow you on social or find the Locked On Kings podcast?
If you want to fight with me on Twitter about something irrelevant, at Matt George Radio is how you can find me there. I don't really do Instagram too much. I need to step up that game, but I believe the handle is the exact same. And then you can find the Locked On Kings podcast wherever you find your podcast, whether that's iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on every platform, so shouldn't be too hard to find us.
You're the new guy, Matt. We expect donuts and coffee.
Chick-fil-A and regularly. Not soggy waffle fries per Hassan Whiteside.
Just don't put a bunch of Reese's candy in my car and all over the locker room, please.
Nor mine. That'll be nor mine. That'll be.
No promises. No promises. Well, we are pleased to be joined by Matt George. Thank you for joining us, Matt. This is only the beginning as we kick off the second season of Kings basketball coverage here on Kings Talk. It's Lina Washington and Sean Cunningham signing off from Sacramento. We'll see you back here next week.